This is Business Inspires, a monthly podcast of the TriVillage Chamber Partnership. To run a successful business, you need resources, valuable connections, and community recognition. Business Inspires will provide you with the tools, resources, and examples to inspire you to create the business you're envisioning. Here's Michelle Wilson, Executive Director of the TriVillage Chamber Partnership.
Hi there, this is Michelle Wilson. I'm the Executive Director with the TriVillage Chamber Partnership, and you're listening to our podcast, Business Inspires. I'm really excited to have Mark Tinus with me today. Mark is with Revolution Experiment and Karate Cowboy as one of the brands. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of those things and all of those things and you today. Yeah. So we're going to start out with you and talk about what Mark wanted to be when he grew up.
Ooh. Well, that's evolved a lot. We'll say it this way. I graduated from Ohio State as a mechanical engineer. So when I was getting going, I was really looking at how to work in a factory and work in operations, and that was the life goal that I had for myself. Wow. And really didn't have much vantage point outside of that until I started to travel. So when I started, my career was with Anheuser-Busch in the brewing department.
Here in Columbus? Here
in Columbus, yeah. Okay. The big brewery up 71 there. They ended up promoting me and moving me out to the brewing department in Newark, New Jersey. And so actually as I left Ohio and kind of broadened my horizons a little bit, kind of opened up a lot of doors and opportunities. And I knew I didn't want to be on call 24/7 in a manufacturing facility my entire life as I watched all my bosses and whatnot grow up. So I went back to grad school at night at NYU and learned about this small profession called management consulting. And so that was really kind of my entry point into, oh, wow, there's this whole big business world out there beyond just making beer at the time, which was all I really knew. So I got into consulting, got into the consulting clubs. And then when I left Anheuser, I got into corporate and marketing strategy consulting. So I was actually working for a small boutique agency in Manhattan, but our base was in London. And so I traveled a lot, did a lot in Western Europe and Africa, South America, just doing branding projects, working for global spirits companies like Bacardi, and their portfolio consists of like Grey Goose and Dewar's and a bunch of brands like that. So it was kind of one of those ones where it wasn't necessarily part of the plan, but it was a hell of a ride. So we just kind of kept going on it.
That's some amazing travel and experience you racked up.
And then eventually my wife was like, I'd love to see you like in the house more and not on planes. So I took one small step down. So I took a job as a marketing director within our Heineken North America's and South America's team. So I actually had 40 some odd markets in the Caribbean, South America, Central America that I was working on. Everything but Heineken was kind of what I always told people. Wow. So it was all the local brands. If you've ever vacationed in like the Bahamas, there's a brand called Calic. I worked on that brand. St. Lucia, there's a brand called Pitone. I worked on that brand. And then Panama, Suriname, a bunch of others. And so that was a fun ride too. But what that really like opened my eyes to was I loved the world of marketing, but I loved the world of marketing strategy even more. And so I really got into this whole marketing on a budget philosophy because every one of my markets was an island or a small country. And, you know, I would get to come back to a boardroom in New York and talk about $2 million budgets for one campaign for the U.S. And I would be fighting for $20,000 to put up a billboard in Haiti, right? Like, and so,
oh my goodness,
you know, these were, so we had to think a little bit more creatively. It became a more holistic model of looking at brand building and needs, and we had to be really insightful about local culture. And, you know, if you're talking about a national brand of Haiti that is 99% market share, and you're dealing with a public of, you know, a population of 10 million people, but their, you know, net income is $1 a day and your beers cost 50 cents, what do you do?
Oh my
right?
gosh,
like, how do you market that product? You're not fighting another competitor because you're 99% market share. You're not trying to, you know, steal all this disposable income because there isn't a lot of disposable income. So what you like turn that into is a philosophy of business building and brand building where you start talking about economic stimulus, and it's not about stealing their 50 cents a day. It's about growing their income by 50 cents a day so they have disposable income, right? So we took a very cool approach to it. Heineken was a great playground because they were very loose and let you kind of explore and do a bunch of different things with it. And so that's really where I kind of got my teeth cut on, wow, this isn't about like fill in box A, B, and C. This is about really getting out of your own comfort zone and doing different things. And once I kind of had a nibble of that, I was kind of addicted. And then it just became very frustrated in corporate America and was like, hey, I got to go start something.
And here you are.
And now I'm here.
So, but I have to go back for a minute because I think it's fascinating that you worked for large brands.
Yeah.
And you would think have deep pockets, and you were fighting for pennies of those budgets.
Well, and it's all relative, right? So when you're working for huge brands with huge, revenue streams, they're going to allocate budget to where they think the potential is and things like that. If you're talking about brands that really could grow but have to grow in innovative ways, it's not something you're going to sink a bunch of budget towards because, what's the goal of a 100% market share brand? We're also in the alcohol industry. We don't want overconsumption. We want premiumization. We want, to better people's lives. So, there's a limit point to where you don't want to overinvest in markets that don't have a ton of potential to grow. And when I tell people I worked for Heineken, people's eyes pop up and they're like, wow, what a great, huge company, yada, yada, that you worked with. And it was always shocking to folks to know that, Heineken as a portfolio of brands in the U.S. alone, when I was there, was about less than 5% market share.
Really?
So for Heineken, Dos Equis, Tecate, which are all the brands that we had here in the U.S., all that summed up was less than 5%. And so coming from Anheuser-Busch, who was nearly 50% of the market,
right.
By the time I left, that's a, light years difference in business size and how they grow. Now globally, they're a much bigger brand. I worked a lot with the team in Mexico because they're major. Those brands are very large in Mexico. But it's always kind of all that point of relativity, right? We know our sandbox and folks are like, Heineken, huge in America. And and I'd say, well, we make 10 times our money in Mexico, right?
Wow.
And that's because of just the size of the business in Mexico. And it's always been this industry. So even though I've bounced around a ton, this industry is just super interesting because literally you go down any rabbit hole and there's brands, there's categories, there's, times of when people are consuming products. And so to me, it's just an ever changing, constant evolving thing that we get to explore every single day, which is kind of cool.
And I think it's also interesting that you went back to school and you still ended up in the beverage industry again.
Right.
You kind of, it seems like this has been your hover, of where you've spent
My wife has
your
said
time.
I've never grown up out of the frat house. So yeah, it's, it's how to spin a multi-decade career and never growing up from when you were 19 or 21. 21.
21. That's exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
No, that is interesting. And also that you've been to all of these exotic places and you came back to Columbus, Ohio. So those are both two really cool things.
Yeah. The Columbus story is great. We get that question all the time, which is, Test City, USA, you our business, which I'm sure we'll get to, is very innovation driven. We're trying to do things outside of our category norms. So we get that question about Columbus a lot. And I go, I met my wife here in 2000 and this was the place we always called home. I was 9 years on the East Coast and we were always like, oh, when are we going to go home? In 9 years. That starts to tell you something about where you should live and where you're ultimately going to go back to raise your kids like you were raised. And so
there's something about the heartland, people that grew up here want to get, it must be the water.
Yeah.
I don't know, but people do tend to want to come back, and raise their kids here, like you said. So, and certainly a great place to start a business.
Absolutely.
So, let's talk a little bit about how you made the transition into starting Revolution Experiment.
A lot of brick walls and a lot of headaches is probably the best way to put it. I think
You're the first person that said that.
Yeah?
I'm joking. No, you're not.
I feel like we've all, done this conversation changes when it goes from coffee to cocktails a little bit. But yeah,
I should note it's early in the morning and we're drinking coffee.
Yeah. I think most entrepreneurs got well educated in an industry and, felt that whole 90% prepared to get into it when reality is we were probably about 10% prepared to get into it. And, that little bit of ignorance is what drives you to keep going forward so that you keep finding out things. Because if I would have had to talk to myself 3 years ago, I don't know if I would have had the stomach 3 years ago to continue doing what we're doing. But luckily I didn't know that. So I just kept going. I started working on this brand for Karate Cowboy with just kind of the intention of doing all the things that I had seen shot down in innovation departments for companies that I had worked on. So big companies were always looking at innovative new trends and where to go at. But for them to invest in a startup type idea like that is hit or miss, where somebody like myself could go and start something up like that and they could come in and buy it. And then their assurance of success goes up dramatically.
Right. And
to them, that investment in a 2-year-old brand versus starting it up themselves is almost negligible to them. I saw that as a space, as someone that wants to get out of corporate decision making and kind of start my own thing. I wanted to get into that. And so I was looking at trends and all the wonderful market research things that we did at Heineken on what categories can we explore. I obviously had kind of an affinity to international brands and international categories. And I kind of fell in love with the social aspects of sake. And so I started exploring sake and why it hasn't really blown up in the U.S. the way that it could, and how consumers really viewed that category and where the evolution was going to go. So on the research side, it was all about Asian fusion and the progress of Asian food in America and how it's growing. And culinary usually leads beverage by 3 to 5 years or so. And so as you see the sprout up of other cool Ohio-based entrepreneurs who are doing things like fusion sushi and tons of the different fusion restaurants that are coming out of Cleveland, but now going statewide and going even region-wide, those are super indicative of where folks are getting kind of socialized into it. Because, 15 years ago, if we were having this conversation, tequila wouldn't have been in a mainstream bar, would have been in a Mexican joint, right?
Interesting, yeah.
You wouldn't have gone to happy hour on Grandview Avenue and seen Taco Tuesday at every single bar, right? That wasn't an acculturation factor that played into the Midwest, but even, American culture. But if you looked at how fish tacos were blowing up in California and then it kind of spread, and we always said there's always these wonderful correlations that you can study on how acculturation works in America. We always looked at Mexican beer and correlated it to avocado consumption. So markets that avocados were being consumed at probably meant there was a lot of places serving guacamole, probably meant there was a lot of places that were serving Mexican beer. And so as that blew up, and guacamole wasn't just in random, Mexican restaurants, but you could get it at any place. Tequila grew, Mexican beer grew, so on and so forth. So we were looking at that kind of as our foresight of all right, now let's look at Asian culture, Asian fusion, and figure out how we can kind of Americanize the sake category in a way. And one of the big things that I was looking at when we were starting that up was how do consumers behave with sake, right? It's right now it's just so ingrained in a sushi restaurant culture. Either, folks know hot, cold, they know sake bombs, they know, is it cloudy, is it not? That's kind of the education stream of where sake's gone, but not a lot of folks are going to sake tastings like they are going to wine tastings and really understanding that, it's a very similar, actually, education trail. Instead of grapes, you're talking rice and rice polish. You're talking water, just like you are with wine. It's all about regions in Japan. So there is this very kind of connoisseurship play to sake, which is how they've grown that category to date. We were trying to shortcut that by not saying hey, we're going to go around and do these sake education tours. Rather, let's look at how other categories have grown through cocktail culture, through mainstream bar use, right? And let's fix some of those fundamental product issues with sake. And so when we got into that, it was, all right, shelf life's a problem for bars because they open it, it's like wine. People are trying to drink it like spirits, meaning have a little bit, put it in a cocktail.
They're not having a 5-ounce, 6-ounce pour.
Right. And if you were going to go and get a sake pour in a non-sushi restaurant, you're not getting the whole bottle, right? You're getting they're pouring it in a sake teeny or they're doing a cocktail with it. Well, and shelf life becomes an issue because if you pour out of that bottle on Monday and it tastes different on Wednesday, now your cocktail program is all out of sorts, right? Or if you have to throw it away by Friday, now you're waste and, the bar economics don't work. So that was kind of issue number one for us was let's fix shelf life. Issue number two was let's simplify because the cocktails, using it as an ingredient, we're doing multiple pours. So we were trying to combine all that under one umbrella. And then also, the biggest entity for me was really trying to just socialize it in the spirits world because a lot of folks had the misconception that it was a spirit already for the good, bad, and indifferent of it all. folks were like, oh, it's not 40% alcohol. And you're like, no, it's like rice wine. It's 13 to 15% alcohol. And so we were just trying to kind of almost create a product that fit the already current existing perception so that we weren't having to educate over the top to get them away from that perception.
Okay.
And so that's where Karate Cowboy came from, a fusion of American and Japanese, which is karate and cowboy. It was a little tongue-in-cheek. We laughed a lot when we came up with it, and we're like, actually, it's kind of picture perfect for what we're trying to create. And we're like, that's, not taking ourselves too seriously, but really trying to accentuate the two cultures that are represented in it. So we took sake from the Kobe region of Japan, which I went over there and scoped out quite a few facilities, but we have a great supplier relationship over there now. We picked the Kobe, Osaka region because they're a little sweeter sakes, less dry. And then we combine it with the 6 times distilled grain neutral, which is a corn-based liquor. If we would filter it, it'd be a vodka. If you'd put it in a barrel, it's a whiskey. Like it's kind of one of those mentalities. But we're taking it in its unfinished perspective, combining it all and then filtering it. So I always say I would love to just be able to say it's kind of like vodka with sake, right? It would make it a lot easier for people to understand. Yeah. But in technical terms, what we're doing is we're taking an unfinished spirit, combining it with our sakes, and then finishing it as if it would be a vodka. But by standards, we can't call that vodka, right? So that's that's the product that we created, and it creates its own kind of category. It's got a lot of floral and creamy notes that you'd expect out of a sake, but it is that 40% alcohol. That added alcohol gives us the shelf life back. So it can behave just like a vodka can. Okay. It doesn't spoil, it doesn't start to degrade over time, doesn't have to be refrigerated, yada, yada. And so it kind of ticks all those boxes that we were really trying to fix with the product to kind of match up to the way consumers were viewing that category. Okay. And so that was the deck that we pulled together 3 years ago. Now where that's like evolved to has been crazy, but that was the initial thinking behind why we created all this. It wasn't just two people sitting in a room being like, let's make sake. Like, that was the thinking.
Well, you mentioned the social part of it, and I'm interested in that because did you mean the social part of it in regards to when you indicated that you didn't want to change people's perception, but you wanted to work with their perception? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, by the social piece? I think when you're looking at the alcohol industry as a whole, I mean, like we're really trying to promote, like we used to say this at Heineken all the time. We were social networking before computers existed, right? Right. You'd go to the pub, you'd meet up with people, you're chatting. That's where you met new people. Right. So many people met their husband or wife at a bar, yada, yada, right? Like, it's a social lubricant as well of sorts with the liquid, but it's about the consumption, like occasion and how we pull it together. Sake is that, and ceremoniously is that in Japan. And so when we were looking at it, it was very much so a celebratory. It was a huge part of wedding ceremonies. It was a huge part of hanging a sake barrel when you opened a new business. It's similar to kind of like what we do when we smash a champagne bottle on a boat. All right. Yeah. Right? Like a big part of the alcohol industry is kind of intertwining in those like celebratory social occasions. And if we wanted to embrace that, just like I think most companies want to embrace it, even down to the brew pub level, of just having a location where you can bring people together, enjoy one thing, not make it too serious, but give folks that playground to meet new people and share experiences with old friends, right? So absolutely. Yeah. Is anybody else out there doing sake that you know of? Or were they when you started? There are a few, all international. There was one company kind of doing a similar thing to us with vodka in Amsterdam, and they're still doing pretty well out in Europe and Asia. And then there was actually a mixology competition where folks were coming up with innovative products, and there was a gin sake blend that came out of the UK about 3 years ago or so. Still relatively like niche as a market, but a lot of folks are playing with it. It's less brands are doing it, but you're starting to see in like the mixology world and especially on the coast, it getting incorporated into more and more high level cocktail making. Okay. Which is really where we want to kind of promote the brand and push it, because it does just add a very unique twist to things that, it's no different than a chef finding a new ingredient. It's, it just adds to the breadth of what folks can do. Right. And that's kind of where we've played in the angle. And then locally here, we have a ton of great spirits producers like popping up and all doing really cool things. And it's, that becomes the question all along is like, how many can we sustain in this market? How can we do this? And, if you view it as the community that we're building here, we're doing what we're doing. Middle West is doing what they're doing. Watershed's got their, perspective. You've got new distilleries popping up in Gahanna with Noble Cut. You've got, 451 in Clintonville.
A new one coming here.
Yeah, new one here as well. Yeah.
Highland.
High Bank.
High Bank
Distilling.
Yes.
Yeah. Great guys. And their place looks amazing already.
It does. I keep driving by hoping I can catch a glimpse. But
but they're hard at work. Adam and Jordan team over there. Great guys. But we all are focused on growing the industry.
Right. And I think Central Ohio is really gaining a great reputation as having some world-class distilleries and spirits.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you guys won.
We did. We did. We just won a couple, three medals, all three of our products at the San Francisco, World, competition in 2017, which has been great. We've loved that because it's an accolade for us that helps to put us on the map. It's exactly the question you just asked, which is who else is doing what we're doing? Mm-hmm. Not a lot, which is great. Right. As an innovative company, you want to kind of be on your own. As a reference point company, it's really difficult, right? Because if I made a vodka, I could say, well, you know what vodka tastes like. Now taste mine, right? Like it tastes different like this, or we want it to be smoother. We want it to have these notes. We want it to be this, right? When nobody has a point of reference of what your liquid is, it's really tough to start educating folks on what it should taste like or why that's quality or what, as you bring into it. So competitions like that help to put us on the map because we're, you're going to 40 key tasters that are familiar with every single style, and they're just basically judging you on the merit of, are you making a good product, right? Like it's not like, oh, I'm a gin drinker and I like it better or worse than gin. It's are we taking the time and the diligence to make a really quality product that fits the style that we're trying to go after, and we got good accolades for it.
You did. I read that there were over 2,000 entries, and it was a blind tasting. So
absolutely, yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
And in 3 years, you've started something, and you're winning medals.
And to be honest with you, it all draws back to community. When I was coming up with this brand in a basement in Brooklyn, we were looking at all of our network. And so when I was creating it, and came time to talk about the actual manufacturing and putting together the products, I used my network to kind of find us a good distiller in Louisville.
Okay.
At the time, so if you look at my timeline, I left Columbus in 2006 and got back in 2015. Okay. So those 9 years, as everybody here is very familiar with, was a pretty drastic change, right? Like, I felt a little bit like Back to the Future as I walked out. I'm like, what is this? This is Short North.
This city has
I can't
changed
afford to live
a
here.
lot in 10 years.
So,
yes.
It's a massive change. So my network was very small. None of these craft distilleries existed in Columbus in 2006. So, so I didn't really know what I was coming back to. Like I said, we were really moving to Columbus because we wanted to live in Columbus. And so we had a distilling partnership when I started this 3 years ago in Louisville because we're like, it's the Mecca, right? Louisville, it's Kentucky.
Of course, that's what you think.
Spirits makers. Yeah. This is where you should be if you're going to create a quality product. Well, lo and behold, it's like anything else. It takes good people with good execution and, investing in the right things, and you find good and bad in every community, right? Like in that regard. And the more and more I actually created a good relationship with Ryan Lang over at Middle West, and we started jamming on the fact of, it started at a bar, like all social settings. We're sitting there drinking.
It still happens.
Yeah. And we were sitting there drinking at North High Brewing, and he turned to me and he goes, why are you making drives down to Louisville to make like small tweaks to your product and doing this, and this? And I was like, honest to God, it's because we just needed to get it done, and we thought we did have a really good relationship with our distiller down in Louisville. It just came time to pick it apart and say, like, well, can we do this better? And Ryan was super confident that he could, and they've done a lot with investing in their place, and they make some really great products, and so we just started picking it apart. And so a year and a half later, we moved all our production in-house with them here in Columbus. So now that's been...
I love that. I love that you collaborated with
absolutely.
That's amazing.
It's always one of those things, and I'm kind of a sole founder sitting around. So having even a sounding board with, the team over there. And I think that a lot of folks just don't realize how collaborative we all are when we have ideas. And it's like, well, did you try this? Did you try that? Like, have we tweaked this? And, we tweaked the process. And so, that was about a year ago now. We've been with them for a year.
So March. Through their growth, you were there. I mean, they have it's a beautiful facility. So good for you.
And so we got that done. And those were actually the first spirits that we pulled off the line at Middle West were the ones that we competed with. And I think folks that have seen our evolution or have tried our products have seen like how we've evolved even as a company. And you never want to say like the first thing that you ever did was worse than anything else that you're going to be doing. But, progress is good, and learning and how people experience your product and cleaning it up. And, we went from a flavors only company to, doing pure spirits and really like bringing back the genuine nature of what we're doing as a product base. And Middle West was a pivotal part of us being able to do that.
That's great.
Without $10 million on our own to go build our own place, right?
And they're smart guys, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they're very good at what they do. So great partnership.
Definitely. Yeah.
Fantastic. So tell me the three main flavors.
Sure. We started actually, again, kind of coming back to that insight base, was we kind of wanted to create some buzz and some attention and do some of our most radical stuff up front. So we actually launched a honey wasabi blend, sweet and spicy. Sounds very radical. The wasabi notes are really strong in it. So and by intention, we normalize it by doing a ton of Bloody Marys with it. So, folks get that horseradishy spice notes to it, but it also came from the culinary world, sweet, spicy. There was a lot of Asian fusion restaurants that were doing this, kind of honey based, main dishes and wasabi based sides so that they could, blend those two flavor profiles together. So we were kind of taking that to heart. Then we launched, I think, a more mass appeal flavor, which was ginger mint. So obviously plays up very well in that mojito and mule world where ginger and mint are really great flavor profiles within there. And then third, which is very backwards in the way that we talk about the brand now, was our natural, like unflavored base. And kind of two reasons for that. One was we learned a lot as a flavor company, and we really wanted folks to be more educated on what our base spirit was, because we didn't want people to think, again, without a reference point, what am I tasting, the base spirit, or is it the flavors that you're adding? We needed our own reference point, I think, for lack of a better term. But then two was actually the distilling capabilities, right? Like I always like politically incorrectly say when you launch an unflavored version, it's like running through the park naked. You better be pretty flawless, right? To be able to show that off, right? And so that was really, we could not get to that level with where we were in Louisville, and we tried. We just weren't getting there. And I think that's a tough decision sometimes when you want to put a product out and market, but you have to be really honest with yourself that it's maybe not ready to go yet, right. and delay. But then we got it out, which is great. And now that's kind of our...
It probably seemed like a long time, but it's only been 3 years.
Right,
in relative terms. I mean, I think that's what I'm fascinated by is the learning and the growing and the changing you've made in 3 years, and the awards you're winning in 3 short years. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Before we wrap up, I want to talk quickly about Simple Times.
Absolutely.
Because you've launched a new line.
We did. Yeah. And I mean, that was the birth of, again, just kind of constantly learning. We were out in market with Karate Cowboy so much with trying to educate people on the cocktail culture of it all. And, I would go to an event and we'd make 1,000 cocktails and people would love the cocktail. And the best we could ever do for them was hand them a recipe card that said, go home and, squeeze pineapples and ginger and lemon and lime and you're good to go. And then get a confused look back and, an angry grunt and then they leave. So what we kind of... It was
probably me.
That was Dig Fest last year.
Might have been Dig Fest.
And so, we kind of took that insight to heart, which was, it came more from an internal need for us, which was we need to be able to make consistent, real, all-natural cocktails that promote spirits brands in the best possible light without just pumping it full of sugar and fructose where it just overshadows the spirits brand. Because, if I took an overly sugared mass, ball of liquid and then just throw any alcohol into it, it's going to overshadow it. It's all going to taste the same.
Right.
Yada, yada. And sugar negates bad alcohol. So that's essentially why those are created the way that they're created, right? Is put the least common denominator in it, and it's still going to taste good. We kind of took the perspective of it's time to grow up, right? Folks aren't going and just buying the worst possible liquor to put in their stuff for their house parties. And therefore, they're buying mixers, though, that overshadow that purchase that they've just made. If you're spending $10 extra for a bottle of liquor, well, then respect your cocktail and make it a better cocktail, right? And so we took that vantage point on it. We started creating mixes that were not only like freshly crafted with 100% all natural ingredients, but then we say surprisingly simple. I affectionately use the term dump and go cocktails, which are literally bring your vodka, bring your bourbon, bring your champagne. You put it in our mix and you got a craft cocktail. And that's like just intended to kind of marry the convenience and quality factors that folks really want to go after. And you shouldn't have to sacrifice one for the other. And so that's really where the birth of Simple Times came from. And that one is only 6 months old. And that's evolved. We went from 3 flavors of that to now we're at, I think, 13 or 14.
Are you really?
That we've started to launch out. It was really awesome because we were able to kind of grow that and bolster it through farmers markets. And I would say like real life market research, which is put something in front of somebody, they taste it, they buy it, we like it. Let's blow that up. Let's figure out a new flavor that can fit in that line. And so we've been super flexible we're only limited by the fresh produce we can bring in.
Right.
And so what we're looking for is, to evolve this even bigger, do more partnerships, do more collaborations. So you're going to see things like we'll be back in the farmers market scene, but now we're we've got a line of mules and lemonades that are now selling in grocery stores across. We just did a collaboration shandy with North High where they're using our blood orange lemonade. We're using their golden ale. Put them together. Now you've got an all local shandy.
Wow.
And so you'll see much more of that coming out of this brand with those 3 tenets that I kind of always like talk about with us as a freshly crafted, simple, but then homegrown. And so we have to live that ethos, which is not only work with other local businesses in collabing and doing all these things, but also how do we ingrain ourselves better in the local agricultural community and work with local farmers and do a real stem to stern vertically and horizontally on how we can work well with everybody, because that's a good reason to believe. I mean, I think one of the challenges when we're looking at brands and we're growing things from Columbus specifically, we can't, all of us as business owners, we can't just flag local because we have a building and we're local, right? We have to really look intrinsically at why does it matter that we're making this in Columbus, Ohio, if we're ever going to get a national stage presence for what we're doing? Right. And I think with Simple Times, when I look at our competitors that are coming out of Brooklyn, coming out of California, their reason to believe is they're cool, hip cities that are doing mixology, right? Our reason to believe is we got awesome agriculture in the Midwest. We grow this stuff. We should have the freshest, most real ingredient products coming out, and people should understand that. And if
we're going to be known for agriculture, and that's what people think of when they think of Ohio or Midwest, then
absolutely
we should rest our hats on it and go.
Where are you growing those strawberries in Viruscape in Brooklyn? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have it here, and we should be promoting that, and we should be pushing it out on a national stage so where people know that you don't fly over these places, you get great products from these places. And that's the mission that we're really trying to push out there with Simple Times, because I think it's time, and I think it's, obviously I think it's a great product, but everybody else can go out and
it is a great product.
Yeah.
It really is.
But that's really where we're coming after it. And it's a huge departure for us as a business, because now we own all that manufacturing. We're doing that all ourselves. So
your degree comes in really handy with that manufacturing. Yeah. See, it came full circle.
Well, my dad's happy because I can use an engineering degree.
Right, exactly.
Again. Yeah, right. So, it wasn't 4 years of wasted.
That's right.
That's
wonderful. Well, I love it. I'm so happy for you guys, and such great success in a short period of time. I know you have many, many more great things to come. Where can we find Simple Times and Revolution Experiment Karate Cowboy?
Check out either one of our websites, karatecowboyspirit.com or simpletimesmixers.com. There's a map with store locators on all of them, but quite a few. We're in about 20 now. grocery/liquor stores for Simple Times, Wyland's Market in Clintonville, 1837 and Chateau Wine and Spirits for New Albany and Polaris. We're working with Hills Markets, both locations.
I saw Twisted Vine.
Yep, Twisted Vine in Grandview, Huffman's in UA for the TriVillage. So yeah, that's been going very, very well. New one out in Worthington, Speckled Hen, is a great shop in Old Worthington. And then you'll see us at the farmers markets this summer. Dublin, Westerville, Worthington, Granville. So we'll be all around those different places. And then we have an online shop too. So check out the online shop.
And you'll be at DigFest.
And we'll be at DigFest, showing off both of our
both
things.
lines. Yeah. That's great.
So yeah, and Karate Cowboy, most local liquor stores, essentially state agencies would have us. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for telling us the story, and I would encourage everybody to get out there and to all of those places and pick some things up and have some cocktails.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks for subscribing, downloading, and listening to Business Inspires, a monthly podcast of the TriVillage Chamber Partnership. Our innovative and active chamber is successful because of our smart and engaged members who cultivate our strong business community. With more than 60 years as an integral part of the Grandview, Upper Arlington, and Marble Cliff communities, the TriVillage Chamber Partnership is dedicated to a single purpose: the success of the business community. You can find a link to our website in the podcast notes to learn more about the TriVillage Chamber Partnership. For information about this podcast, to schedule a guest appearance, or to find out more about sponsoring this podcast, our contact information is in the podcast notes. Make sure you rate and review our podcast on iTunes. That helps us spread the word about Business Inspires.
Circle270media.com